The massive space station hung in the void like a crystal flower. Its name was Concordia, and it served as the neutral meeting place for the galaxy's most important discussions. Today, it hosted what many believed would be the final conversation between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chen walked through the station's gleaming corridors. Her simple black uniform looked plain next to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the alien delegates she passed. Some had scales that shifted color with their emotions. Others floated in mechanical suits filled with exotic gases. A few looked almost human, except for their silver eyes or too many fingers. They all stared at her as she passed. She could feel their thoughts. Here was the representative of the species that had somehow managed to fight the entire galaxy to a standstill. Here was the human who might decide whether this war would continue or end. Chen reached the main conference hall. The room was enormous, built to accommodate beings of many different sizes and environmental needs. At the center sat a circular table made from a single piece of crystallized starlight. 12 chairs surrounded it, 11 occupied by the most powerful beings in known space. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthak rose as Chen entered. His body was made of living crystal, each facet catching and reflecting the room's soft light. When he spoke, his voice rang like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Admiral Chen," he said. "Thank you for coming. Please, take your seat." Chen nodded and sat in the single empty chair. It had been made specifically for human anatomy, one of the few concessions the aliens had made. She pulled out a small notebook and pen from her jacket pocket. Several delegates made sounds that might have been laughter. "Still using primitive tools, I see," commented Ambassador Vexhai of the Mordanian Empire. Her snake-like body coiled in her specialized chair, 6 arms gesturing dismissively. How charmingly backward. Chen simply opened her notebook and waited. She had learned long ago that patience was often humanity's greatest weapon. Zethkar activated a holographic display above the table. Star charts appeared, showing the current state of the war. Red zones marked areas of human control. They had grown significantly in the past 3 years. "Let us begin with facts," Zethkar said. 3 years ago, humanity emerged from what we believed was primitive isolation. You had barely achieved faster than light travel. Your technology was centuries behind ours. Your population numbered only 8 billion across a handful of worlds. He gestured, and the display zoomed in on various battle sites. Yet somehow, you have managed to destroy our outer colonies. You have captured our supply lines. You have made our people afraid to sleep at night. How do you explain this? Chen made a note in her book. "We are resourceful," she said simply. This time, the alien laughter was more obvious. Ambassador Krelthok of the asteroid miners slammed one of his 4 fists on the table. His rocky hide grated against itself as he moved. "Resourceful?" he roared. "You are pests. Clever pests, yes, but still pests. You bite and run and hide like cowards. You have no honor in battle." "Honor is a luxury," Chen replied, still writing. "We prefer to win." General Coxmoon of the Hive Collective leaned forward. Her insect-like features were impossible for humans to read, but her tone carried clear irritation. "Your winning streak ends today, human. We offer you terms, accept them, and your species continues to exist. Refuse, and we will crush every human world into dust." Chen looked up from her notebook. "I'm listening." Zethkar activated another display. This one showed the Sol system with Earth highlighted in blue. "These are our requirements," he began. "First, immediate cessation of all human military activities. Your ships will power down their weapons and return to human space. Second, complete withdrawal of all human forces to the Sol system. You will not leave your home system without permission. Third, acceptance of hegemony oversight. Our governors will manage human affairs to ensure compliance." The display changed to show population, numbers, trillions of aliens across thousands of worlds, 8 billion humans on a dozen planets. Fourth, war reparations. You will provide resources and labor to repair the damage you have caused. Fifth, surrender of all human military leaders for trial and punishment. Sixth, dismantling of your weapons. Manufacturing capability. Chen continued taking notes. The scratching of her pen on paper was the only sound in the vast chamber. And finally, Zethkar concluded, humanity will provide a formal apology to all affected species and accept status as a protectorate under hegemony rule. He sat back down, his crystal body chiming softly. "These terms are generous, considering your crimes. We could simply exterminate your species. Our combined fleets outnumber yours by more than 10,000 to 1. Our technology makes your weapons look like sharp sticks. Your total population could fit into one of our smaller cities." Ambassador Silthis of the Aquatic Domains spoke. Next. Her translator made her watery voice sound almost human. We are being merciful because we recognize that you are young. Your species has potential if properly guided. Accept these terms, and humanity might survive long enough to mature. Chen closed her notebook and placed her pen beside it. She looked around the table, meeting the eyes or optical sensors or whatever served as eyes for each delegate. These are your final terms, she asked. They are, Zethkar confirmed. We expect your answer within 1 standard day. Use that time to contact your leaders, make them understand that this is their only chance. Chen stood up. I will need to consult with Earth, as you suggest. 24 hours should be sufficient. He walked toward the exit, then paused and turned back. One question, if I may. What makes you so certain that humanity will accept these terms? General Coxmoon's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among her species. Simple mathematics, human. We have calculated every possible scenario. Your species cannot win. You lack the numbers, the technology, and the industrial capacity. Fighting us is like an insect declaring war in a thunderstorm. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Mathematics. Yes, I suppose that would seem logical to you. She made one more note in her book. I will have our answer for you tomorrow. As she left the chamber, Chen could hear the aliens beginning to discuss among themselves. Their various languages created a symphony of clicks, whistles, harmonics, and vibrations. She understood more of it than they knew, but she kept walking. The corridors of Concordia seemed different now. The alien delegates she passed looked more confident, more relaxed. They believed the war was essentially over. All that remained was for humanity to formally surrender. Chen reached her quarters and sealed the door behind her. She activated her communications array and opened a channel to Earth. The transmission would take several hours to reach home, even with the fastest quantum entanglement systems. This is Admiral Chen, she began recording. The hegemony has presented their terms. They are, as expected, completely unacceptable. Please confirm that all preparations are complete. I will deliver our response tomorrow. She ended the transmission and sat on her bed. Through the small porthole she could see the stars. Somewhere out there, trillions of aliens slept peacefully, confident that they had solved their human problem. They believed tomorrow would bring surrender and the end of humanity's brief, violent emergence onto the galactic stage. Chen allowed herself a small smile as she prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would indeed bring an end to one phase of this conflict. But not the end her hosts expected. The next morning, Chen returned to the conference hall exactly on time. The alien delegates were already seated, their body language suggesting confidence and satisfaction. They had spent the night discussing how to divide up human territory. Once the surrender was formalized, Zethkar's crystal form caught the morning light streaming through the station's transparent sections. Admiral Chen, he said, his voice carrying the musical quality of success. I trust you had productive communications with your leaders? Chen sat down and opened her notebook to a fresh page. Very productive, thank you. She uncapped her pen and wrote the date at the top of the page, her movements calm and deliberate. Excellent, said Ambassador Vexhai, her 6 arms weaving through the air in what Chen recognized as a gesture of anticipation. Then you are prepared to accept our terms? I am prepared to deliver humanity's official response, Chen replied, continuing to write in her notebook. The aliens exchanged what passed for glances among their various species. Their intelligence networks had been monitoring human communications throughout the night. What they had seen filled them with satisfaction. General Coxmoon clicked her mandibles together. Our intelligence services intercepted numerous transmissions from Earth. Your leaders seemed quite distressed. Emergency sessions, military commanders entering bunkers, frantic debates. Exactly what we expected when an inferior species finally faces reality. Chen nodded without looking up from her writing. Earth's government takes important decisions very seriously. As they should, chuckled Ambassador Krelthok, his rocky hide grinding against his chair. The survival of their species hangs in the balance. Chen finished writing and looked up at the assembled delegates. 12 of the galaxy's most powerful beings stared back at her, confident in their victory. Their combined civilizations controlled 90% of known space. Their populations numbered in the trillions. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's. The Terran Republic has carefully considered your generous offer, Chen began, her voice carrying the same calm tone she had used the day before. Ambassador Silthias leaned forward in her water-filled suit, bubbles escaping as she moved. And? We respectfully decline. The silence that followed lasted nearly 10 seconds. Then Ambassador Vexhai made a sound that her translator rendered as confused laughter. Decline? She repeated. You decline? Did you not understand the terms? Did your primitive communication systems fail to convey the reality of your situation? Chen turned to a new page in her notebook. The terms were quite clear. Humanity chooses to reject them. General Coxmoon's compound eyes fixed on Chen with laser-like intensity. You cannot be serious. No species is that foolish. You are bluffing. I never bluff, Chen said, making another note. Instead, humanity presents counterterms. The alien. Delegates looked at each other in what could only be described as bewilderment. Zethkar's crystal body actually shifted color, a sign of extreme confusion among his people. Counterterms, he managed. What possible terms could you offer? Chen stood up, leaving her notebook open on the table. The Terran Republic demands the immediate withdrawal of all hegemony military forces from any system containing human populations. You have 72 hours to comply. The chamber erupted, not in anger, but in laughter. The sound was incredible. Crystal chimes mixing with insectoid clicking, aquatic bubbling blending with mineral grinding. Ambassador Krelthok laughed, so hard that small rocks fell from his hide. 72 hours, wheezed Ambassador Vexhai between fits of laughter. Oh, this is rich. The rabbits are demanding that the wolves leave the forest. General Coxmoon tried to speak but could only produce clicking sounds as her entire body shook with mirth. Ambassador Silthus was laughing so hard that her aquatic suit's filtration system struggled to keep up with the bubbles. Even the normally composed Zethkar resonated with harmonics that indicated deep amusement. Admiral Chen, he said when he could finally speak, perhaps the stress of your position has affected your judgment. Let me remind you of some basic facts. He activated the holographic display, showing comparative population numbers. 12,400,000,000,000 hegemony citizens versus 8 billion humans. That is a ratio of approximately 1,500 to 1. The display changed to show military assets. 7,000 capital ships, 200,000 support vessels, 48,000 military installations. Your entire fleet consists of perhaps 200 ships. More numbers appeared. Industrial capacity, technological advancement, territorial control. In every measurable category, humanity represents less than 1% of hegemony capability. You are asking us to fear an ant colony. Chen sat back down and returned to her writing. Mathematics can be deceiving, she said calmly. Not when the numbers are this stark, replied Ambassador Vexhai, her amusement fading into irritation. What you propose is not negotiation. It is fantasy. Perhaps you misunderstood our position, suggested Ambassador Silthus. We are not negotiating between equals. We are offering terms to a conquered people. Your only choice is between comfortable, slavery, and complete extinction. Chen looked up from her notebook. To demonstrate our commitment to our terms, we offer a proof of concept. The laughter stopped. The aliens suddenly focused their complete attention on the humans sitting calmly at their table. Proof of concept? Zethkar asked carefully. Chen reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. It looked like nothing more than a basic human communication unit, primitive compared to the technology surrounding them. This device is connected to our monitoring systems, she explained, setting it on the table. It will allow you to observe our demonstration in real time. The device projected a simple hologram showing a star system. The aliens recognized it immediately. Kepler 442, home to the hegemony's largest military shipyard. Kepler 442, Chen said conversationally as if discussing the weather. A G5 V-class star, very stable. Stellar engineers classify it as having approximately 3 billion years of main sequence life remaining. She checked her simple wristwatch, another primitive human affectation that had amused the delegates. Current time is 1422. Standard Galactic. The Kepler 442 system contains approximately 12 million hegemony personnel and represents 300 years of accumulated military infrastructure. The aliens stared at the hologram showing normal system activity. Massive orbital platforms, constructed warships, transport vessels moved between planets. Defense networks maintained constant vigilance. At exactly 1425, Chen continued, her voice never changing from its conversational tone. Kepler 442's star will undergo catastrophic helium flash, rendering the entire system uninhabitable. Ambassador Vexhai's scales shifted to deep red, a sign of alarm among her species. That is impossible. Stellar engineering on that scale requires technology millennia beyond your capability. More importantly, added Zethkar, his crystal form, beginning to resonate with nervous energy, such modifications would take centuries to implement. We would have detected any attempt to interfere with the star. Chen made another note in her book. Would you? General Coxmoon was frantically activating her own communication systems trying to contact Kepler 442. This is an elaborate bluff. No species has the capability to trigger stellar events on command. Chen looked at her watch again. 1424. 1 minute remaining. The chamber fell silent except for the various breathing and life support systems. Every alien delegate stared at the hologram showing peaceful activity in the Kepler 442 system. Chen counted down the final seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. At exactly 14:25, long-range sensors confirmed the impossible. Kepler 442's star convulsed, its outer layers beginning to expand at tremendous speed. The careful orbital dance of planets and stations turned into chaos as gravitational fields shifted. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels as 12 million beings tried to escape the expanding stellar envelope. The hologram showed it all in terrible detail. Within minutes, 3 centuries of hegemony military construction was consumed by superheated plasma expanding at a significant fraction of light speed. Chen closed her notebook and stood up. 72 hours, she repeated quietly. I suggest you use the time wisely. The silence in the chamber stretched on as the delegates stared at the holographic display. Where moments before had shown a thriving star system, now there was only an expanding shell of superheated gas. 12 million lives gone in an instant. 300 years of military construction erased as if it had never existed. Ambassador Zethkar was the first to speak, his crystal form vibrating with frequencies that indicated deep shock. How? The single word came out as barely a whisper. Chen remained standing, her notebook tucked under one arm. Her expression was pleasant, almost maternal, like a teacher addressing students who had finally grasped a difficult concept. You have made a fundamental error in your assessment of our species, she said calmly. You have confused primitive with backward and young with weak. General Kaxmoon's compound eyes were still fixed on the display, watching the expanding wave of destruction. The energy requirements alone, it should be impossible. Your entire civilization lacks the power output to trigger a stellar event. Humanity has been preparing for this conversation for quite some time, Chen continued, ignoring the interruption. She walked slowly around the table, her simple black shoes clicking softly on the crystalline floor. Ambassador Vexhai's 6 arms writhed in agitation, her scales shifting through colors that indicated confusion and fear. Preparing? You only achieved faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. We have records of your first crude FTL experiments. Chen paused behind Vexhai's chair. You have records of what we allowed you to see. Tell me, Ambassador, what do you know about humanity's first contact with galactic civilization? Standard historical record, Zethkar replied, his voice regaining some composure. 67 years ago, our deep space monitors detected primitive radio transmissions from your system. First contact protocols were initiated. Your species was classified as pre-FTL, suitable for eventual uplift and integration. Chen nodded approvingly. And when did you actually make contact? 30 years ago, when you achieved rudimentary FTL capability. Standard procedure. We waited until you demonstrated readiness for galactic society. Except, Chen said, continuing her circuit around the table. Humanity has been aware of galactic civilization for over 2 centuries. The words hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Ambassador Silthis's aquatic suit bubbled frantically as her breathing rate increased. That is impossible. Our monitoring systems are comprehensive. Chen reached her original seat, but remained standing. In 1847, human astronomers detected artificial radiation signatures from the Centauri system. By 1876, we had cracked your basic communication protocols. By 1903, we had identified major trade routes and political structures. She opened her notebook and flipped through several pages. Would you like to know what humanity learned during those 2 centuries of observation? Without waiting for an answer, she continued. We learned that galactic civilization was built on the assumption of technological superiority, determining political power. We learned that species were classified and treated according to their perceived advancement. We learned that primitive worlds were considered suitable for exploitation and control. General Kaxmoon finally tore her attention away from the holographic destruction. Even if true observation does not grant the capability to destroy stars, the technology required was developed over the course of 200 years, Chen interrupted smoothly. While you believed you were dealing with a species that had achieved FTL travel mere decades ago, humanity had actually been secretly infiltrating galactic society since the 1800s. The implications began to dawn on the delegates. Ambassador were. Krelthok's rocky hide scraped against itself as he shifted uncomfortably. Infiltrating, what do you mean? Chen flipped to another page in her notebook. Operation Prometheus began in 1923. The first human agents were surgically and genetically modified to pass as various alien species. They established identities, built careers, started families. Some of their descendants are probably sitting In this room's support staff right now. Ambassador Vexahai's scales went completely white, a sign of shock among her people. That would mean generations of deep cover agents. Currently, we estimate approximately 40,000 human agents, and their descendants operating throughout hegemony space, Chen confirmed. They hold positions in governments, militaries, research institutions, and manufacturing facilities. Some have reached very high levels of authority. She turned several more pages. For example, the quantum-engineered matter converters that were installed in every major star in hegemony space. Those required access to stellar engineering facilities, shipping networks, and installation teams. Such access could only be gained through long-term infiltration. Zethkar's entire crystalline body shifted color rapidly, cycling through the spectrum as he processed the information. Every major star? Every major star, Chen confirmed. Population centers, military installations, industrial systems, government capitals. Each one seeded with devices that can trigger catastrophic stellar events on command. The chamber filled with the sounds of alien panic. Breathing apparatus worked overtime. Translation systems struggled to keep up with rapid exchanges in dozens of languages. Several delegates were frantically trying to contact their homeworlds. Please don't attempt to contact your home systems to warn them, Chen said pleasantly. We have temporarily suspended your communications. Standard security. Protocol during sensitive negotiations. General Cox Moon slammed multiple fists on the table. You are talking about genocide on an unprecedented scale. Trillions of innocent lives. Chen's expression didn't change. Are we? Let me ask you something, General. What were your plans for humanity if we had refused your terms? The Hive Collective's military leader fell silent. The complete extermination of our species. Chen answered her own question. Every man, woman, and child. 8 billion lives snuffed out because we had the audacity to defend ourselves. But when we demonstrate the ability to respond in kind, suddenly the conversation becomes about innocent lives and unprecedented genocide. She closed her notebook with a soft snap. Humanity learned something important during our 2 centuries of observation. The galaxy respects only one thing: superior firepower. You don't negotiate with species you consider inferior. You dictate terms to them. Ambassador Silthis finally found her voice. But the scale? You could destroy entire civilizations. Yes, Chen agreed simply. Just as you planned to destroy ours. The only difference is capability. You assumed you had it and we didn't. You were wrong. Zethkar struggled to maintain diplomatic composure. Even assuming everything you claim is true, surely there must be some middle ground, some way to resolve this without the threat of mutual annihilation. Chen walked back to her chair and sat down, reopening her notebook to a fresh page. There is. Accept our terms. Withdraw your military forces from systems containing human populations. Acknowledge humanity's right to exist and expand without interference. And if we refuse? Asked Ambassador Vexahai, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. Chen looked at her wristwatch. The 72-hour deadline remains in effect. At the end of that period, if hegemony forces have not withdrawn as demanded, we will begin demonstrating our commitment to enforcement. More stars, General Cox Moon said flatly. Selected carefully for maximum psychological impact, Chen confirmed. Capital systems first, then major population centers, then military installations. We have run extensive computer models to determine the optimal sequence for achieving compliance while minimizing overall casualties. She made a note in her book. Of course, the casualties would still number in the trillions, but as you said yesterday, mathematics is mathematics. Sometimes unpleasant decisions must be made for the greater good. The aliens sat in stunned silence, processing the complete reversal of their situation. An hour ago, they had been dictating terms to a conquered species. Now they found themselves facing an enemy that could apparently destroy them at will. Chen stood up again and walked toward the exit. I suggest you use the remaining 71 hours wisely. Contact your governments. Explain the situation. Begin withdrawal preparations. She paused at the doorway and turned back. Oh, and one more thing. Don't assume this is a bluff simply because the scale seems impossible. Humanity didn't survive by making empty threats. We survived by making our enemies too terrified to test us. The hours that followed Chen's departure were unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The confident delegates who had arrived to accept humanity's surrender found themselves scrambling to prevent the collapse of civilization itself. Zethkar stood at the center of the conference chamber, his crystalline form flickering through colors that had no names in most languages. Around him, the other delegates argued, pleaded, and calculated with desperate intensity. We need confirmation. insisted General Coxmoon, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays that showed continued stellar destruction at Kepler 442. Independent verification that they can actually do what they claim. Ambassador Vexhi's 6 arms moved in frantic patterns as she processed data streams from across the galaxy. Our deep space monitors are detecting quantum signatures near 17 major stars. Signatures that match the energy patterns recorded at Kepler 442 just before the stellar event. 17 systems, repeated Ambassador Krelthok, his rocky hide grinding with stress. That includes New Vorthak, the aquatic domain capital, and 3 hive collective breeding worlds. The implications were staggering. If humanity could trigger stellar events at will, they had effectively placed a gun to the head of galactic civilization. Every major population center sat next to a potential weapon. Zethkar activated his emergency communication protocols, only to be met with static. Still nothing. They have maintained the communication blackout for over 6 hours now. How is that even possible? Demanded Ambassador Silthis, bubbles of agitation streaming from her aquatic suit. Our communication networks span the galaxy. They use quantum entanglement, subspace resonance, even exotic matter channels. No single species should be able to disrupt all of them simultaneously. General Coxmoon's mandibles clicked rapidly as she accessed classified military databases. Unless they have been infiltrating our systems for as long as they claim, 200 years of access would allow them to plant backdoors in every major communication hub. The delegates fell silent as the full scope of humanity's preparation became clear. This wasn't the desperate gambit of a cornered species. This was the culmination of 2 centuries of careful planning and systematic infiltration. Ambassador Vexhi spoke first. We need to consider the possibility that they are telling the truth, complete truth, about the infiltration, the stellar weapons, all of it. The mathematics support it, admitted Zethkar reluctantly. If they began serious preparation 200 years ago, they would have had time to develop the necessary technology and place it strategically throughout our space. But the energy requirements alone, protested Ambassador Krelthok, could be met through careful engineering over extended periods, General Coxmoon finished. We have been thinking in terms of brute force stellar manipulation, but if you had decades to modify each star gradually, introducing quantum-engineered matter at the stellar core level. She trailed off as her tactical computers finished their analysis. The results were terrifying in their simplicity. Given enough time and access, stellar manipulation was not just possible but inevitable. They played us, said Ambassador Silthis quietly. For 2 centuries, they watched and learned and prepared, while we assumed they were primitive and isolated. Zethkar's form began to resonate with harmonics of defeat. The question now is what we do with this knowledge. The chamber's main display activated without input from any of the delegates. Chen's face appeared, her expression as calm and pleasant as ever. Good evening, she said, as if greeting old friends. I hope you have used your time productively. General, Coxmoon leaned forward aggressively. We demand proof of your claims, independent verification of your capabilities. Chen tilted her head slightly, an almost curious expression crossing her features. You have already seen our capabilities demonstrated. The Kepler 442 system no longer exists. One system, Ambassador Vexhi interjected, her scales shifting to aggressive red. One system does not prove you can threaten the entire galaxy. True, Chen agreed mildly. She looked down at something off-screen, presumably her notebook. Current time is 21:37. In 3 minutes, the Rigel 7 system will experience a similar stellar event. Rigel 7 houses approximately 40 million hegemony civilians and serves as a major shipping hub. The delegates frantically activated their monitoring systems, focusing long-range sensors on the Rigel 7 system. They found normal activity, cargo ships moving between planets, civilian traffic following standard patterns, a population going about their evening routines. This is your choice, Chen continued conversationally. Accept our terms and Rigel 7 continues its peaceful existence. Continue to resist, and 40 million people will die in the next few minutes. You cannot be serious, gasped Ambassador Silthis. 40 million innocent lives as a demonstration? Chen's expression remained unchanged. You were prepared to exterminate 8 billion innocent humans. The scale is different, but the principle is identical. Zethkar stepped forward, his crystalline form resonating with desperate harmonics. Wait, please, if we agree to discuss withdrawal, will you cancel the demonstration? Chen appeared to consider this. Discuss withdrawal? No, discussing is what we have been doing for the past day. I need commitment to actual withdrawal. That decision is beyond our authority, General Coxmoon said quickly. We would need to contact our respective governments, obtain authorization. 45 seconds, Chen interrupted, glancing at her watch. The chamber erupted in frantic activity. Delegates shouted into their communication devices, tried to activate emergency channels, attempted to reach anyone with the authority to make binding decisions. But the communication blackout remained in effect. 20 seconds. Ambassador Vex High spoke with desperate urgency. Speaking for the Mordanian Empire, we accept your terms. Complete military withdrawal from all systems containing human populations. 15 seconds. The aquatic domains agree, added Ambassador Silthes rapidly. 10 seconds. The Vorthak hegemony agrees, said Zethkar, his voice carrying the harmonic patterns of formal surrender. General Coxmoon held out until the final moments. 5 seconds. The Hive Collective agrees to your terms. 3, 2, 1. Chen looked up from her watch. Excellent. Rigel 7 will continue to exist. The delegates collapsed into their chairs, exhausted by the intensity of those final seconds. They had just surrendered the greatest military alliance in galactic history in less than a minute. Chen made a note in her off-screen notebook. Now, then let's discuss the details of your withdrawal. All military vessels will power down weapons and begin movement toward your respective borders immediately. Civilian populations may remain, but under human protection and administration. Human administration? Repeated Ambassador Krelthok weakly. Of course. These systems now fall under Terran Republic authority. We will establish governors and administrative staff to ensure smooth transitions. Zethkar's crystalline form had shifted to colors indicating complete defeat. What of our governments? Our existing political structures? Chen's smile was warm and reassuring. They will continue to function naturally, under human oversight to ensure compliance with the new galactic order. The weight of their situation finally settled on the delegates. They had not simply agreed to a ceasefire or negotiated a peace treaty. They had surrendered galactic governance to a species they had dismissed as primitive only hours earlier. Communication blackout will be lifted in 6 hours. Chen continued. That should give you time to prepare appropriate announcements. I suggest emphasizing the peaceful nature of this transition and the benefits of human leadership. She stood up, apparently preparing to end the conversation. Oh, and please remember that we still maintain our stellar modification capabilities. Compliance with the new order is not optional. General Coxmoon found her voice one last time. How do we know you won't simply destroy us anyway, once you have what you want? Chen paused, considering the question seriously. Because genocide is inefficient, General. We need your populations, your knowledge, your industrial capabilities. Dead civilizations produce nothing of value. She gathered her materials. Humanity survived not by destroying our enemies, but by making them serve our interests. The galaxy is much more useful to us alive and productive. The transmission ended, leaving 12 delegates alone with the magnitude of what had just occurred. In less than 72 hours, the entire structure of galactic civilization had been overturned by a species that most of them had never taken seriously. Outside the conference chamber, the stars continued to shine. But now each point of light represented not just a sun but a potential weapon in humanity's arsenal. The age of alien dominance was over. The human era had begun. 6 months after the peace talks, Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her office on Earth, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The transformation had been remarkable in its speed and completeness. Where once 12 proud civilizations had ruled their respective domains, now human governors administered former alien territories with quiet efficiency. Her assistant, Lieutenant Martinez, entered with the daily briefings. Ma'am, we have compliance reports from all sectors. The Vorthak have completed military withdrawal from the Centauri region. The Hive Collective is ahead of schedule on their industrial conversion projects. Chen nodded, making notes in the same paper notebook she had used during the negotiations. Some habits died hard. Any resistance movements? Nothing significant. The aquatic domains reported some minor protests on their outer worlds, but they were handled locally. Overall, acceptance of the new administration appears to be remarkably high. This was true, though not surprising. When faced with the alternative of stellar annihilation, most populations had embraced human rule with enthusiasm that bordered on desperation. Better to live under alien management than to not live at all. Director Harrison entered the office without knocking, a privilege of rank and long friendship. He dropped into the chair across from Chen's desk and ran his hands through his gray hair. The Senate Intelligence Committee wants another briefing, he said wearily. They're asking the same questions again. Chen looked up from her reports. About the stellar modification technology? About whether it actually exists. Harrison leaned back in his chair. Senator Williams is convinced we're running the most elaborate bluff in human history. He keeps demanding technical specifications, test data, proof of concept beyond the Kepler 4042 event. Chen set down her pen and regarded her old friend with amusement. And what do you tell him? What you told me to tell him. That the technology is classified beyond his clearance level, and that asking too many questions about our most sensitive capabilities is a good way to lose his security rating. But you're wondering too, Chen observed. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. They had known each other for 30 years, served together in 3 different conflicts before the Galactic War. He could read her better than most. Sarah, he said finally, I've seen our entire military budget. I know what we spend on research and development. The energy requirements alone for stellar manipulation would bankrupt us. Hell, they'd bankrupt most of the galaxy. Chen opened her notebook and flipped through several pages, as if looking for a specific entry. Tom, let me ask you something. What do you think would have happened if I had walked into that conference room and told them the truth? What truth? That humanity had no stellar modification capability at all. That we couldn't destroy a single star, let alone every major system in their territory. That our entire threat was based on one very lucky coincidence, and a lot of carefully managed misinformation. Harrison stared at her. Sarah, what are you saying? Chen found the page she was looking for and ran her finger down a list of dates and numbers. Kepler 442 was already scheduled to go unstable. Our deep space monitors detected the preliminary quantum fluctuations 18 months ago. The star was going to undergo helium flash whether we were there or not. The silence that followed was deafening. Harrison opened his mouth several times before any sound came out. You mean, we had approximately 18 months to plan our entire galactic strategy around a single, naturally occurring stellar event that we knew was coming, but our enemies didn't. Chen turned several more pages. The timing had to be perfect. We needed to be in negotiations when the star went critical. We needed to make our threat just minutes before the natural event occurred. We needed to make it look like we had triggered something that was already inevitable. Harrison was pale now, processing the implications. The quantum signatures your people detected near other stars? Background radiation from our deep space monitoring equipment. Completely harmless, but indistinguishable from the energy patterns that preceded the Kepler 442 event if you don't know what to look for. The communication blackouts? Standard military jamming technology, deployed from ships that were already in position throughout their territory. Nothing exotic, just good timing and coordination? Harrison slumped in his chair. Jesus, Sarah. You bet the entire future of the human race on a bluff? Chen closed her notebook and smiled. Not a bluff, Tom. A calculated risk based on superior intelligence and enemy psychology. She stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Earth looked peaceful from this height, but she knew it was a hive of activity as humanity adjusted to its new role as galactic administrators. The aliens made the same mistake that humans have made countless times throughout history. They assumed that superior technology automatically meant superior strategy. They never considered that we might be playing a completely different game. But what happens when they figure it out? Harrison asked urgently. What happens when they realize we can't actually destroy their stars? Chen turned back to face him. They won't figure it out. How can you be so certain? Because we're going to make sure they can't test the theory. Chen walked back to her desk and opened a different section of her notebook. Every time a star goes naturally unstable anywhere in former hegemony space, we're going to claim credit. Every solar flare, every stellar event, every cosmic coincidence becomes proof of our continued capability. She showed him a page covered with astronomical data. Our science teams have identified 47 stars that will experience significant events over the next 50 years. Everything from minor flares to complete collapse. We'll claim responsibility for all of them. Harrison was beginning to understand. And if they try to test you by refusing orders? We select a star that's already scheduled to go critical and give them a deadline that coincides with the natural event. Same strategy, different target. But eventually, they'll want a CO. Demonstration on demand. A star that isn't naturally unstable. Chen's smile was cold. Then we'll give them one. She opened her notebook to a final section, filled with technical diagrams and mathematical equations. Stellar modification technology isn't science fiction, Tom. It's just extremely expensive and time-consuming. We've been working on it for 6 months now, using resources and information seized from our new subjects. You mean you're actually building the capability you claim to have? We're building the capability we need to maintain the illusion. The irony is perfect. We're using the wealth and knowledge of the civilizations we conquered through deception to make that deception into reality. Harrison laughed despite himself. So, the bluff becomes the truth. Exactly. By the time anyone realizes what we actually did, we'll have the genuine capability to do it again, and by then it won't matter anyway. Chen returned to her seat and opened her daily reports. Human governors are being accepted throughout former hegemony space. Our language is being taught in their schools. Our economic systems are being integrated with their infrastructure. In another generation, they won't remember what independence looked like. She made a note about industrial production quotas in the Mordanian sector. The greatest victory isn't destroying your enemies, Tom. It's making them want to serve you. Lieutenant Martinez returned with another stack of reports. Ma'am, we have a request from the Vorthak Education Ministry. They want to include human history in their standard curriculum. Approved, Chen said without looking up. Make sure they emphasize humanity's patience and long-term planning capabilities. After Martinez left, Harrison asked one final question. Sarah, were you ever actually worried? During the negotiations, I mean. Did you ever think they might call your bluff? Chen finished reading a production report and closed the folder. Every single second, Tom. But that's what made it believable. I was genuinely terrified that they would test us, and that terror came through in every word I spoke. They read it as confidence in our ability to destroy them. She looked out the window again, watching human shuttles ferry alien delegations to various meetings throughout the city. Fear and confidence look surprisingly similar from the outside. The trick is making sure your enemies can't tell the difference. Director Harrison stood up to leave, still shaking his head in amazement. The most successful military operation in human history, and it was all smoke and mirrors. Chen picked up her pen and opened her notebook to a fresh page. Not smoke and mirrors, Tom. Just superior understanding of the game we were really playing. They thought it was about technology and firepower, but it was always about psychology and timing. As Harrison reached the door, she called after him. And Tom, make sure the Intelligence Committee understands that asking too many questions about our capabilities could compromise operational security. Some secrets need to stay secret, even from us. After he left, Chen sat alone in her office, surrounded by reports from across the galaxy. Every page represented another small victory in the ongoing campaign to transform human dominance from illusion into reality. She made one final note in her book. Day 184 of the Human Era. Status. On schedule. Outside. Her window. Alien children played in Earth's parks while their parents attended integration seminars.